For 100 years, the name Boeing meant something. It stood for American engineering, for ambition, and above all, for safety. But a string of just devastating failures has completely shattered that legacy. So today, we're going to break down the story, a story decades in the making, of how this corporate giant lost its way. So that really brings us to the one big question at the heart of all this, right? How did a company that literally helped put a man on the moon, the company that made air travel possible for pretty much everyone, how did they end up in a crisis that was completely of their own making? It's quite a story. Let's get into it. All right, let's jump right into the present day. We're going to look at the massive challenge facing Boeing's leadership right now. There's a new CEO at the helm, and their job? Well, it's nothing short of saving a company that is teetering on the absolute edge. Okay, so just put yourself in the new CEO's shoes for a second. On one side, you've got Wall Street breathing down your neck, demanding those billion-dollar profits like yesterday. On the other side, the FAA drops this scathy report on your desk about quality control. And then your own engineers, they're practically begging you for a total cultural reset. It is a perfect storm of conflicting demands. And believe me, every single choice could have monumental consequences. But to really get how Boeing ended up in this mess, we have to rewind the clock. The turning point, you might be surprised to hear, wasn't some technical glitch. No. It was a corporate merger back in 1997 that would, and I mean this literally, change the company's DNA forever. And this is where you can really see the two cultures just collide. The old Boeing, that was a kingdom run by engineers. Their whole mission was simple: build the best, safest plane possible, period. But after they merged with McDonnell Douglas, a whole new philosophy took over. It was all about shareholder value, about the stock price above everything else. There was even a cynical joke inside the company that it was McDonnell Douglas buying Boeing with Boeing's own money. That tells you a lot. And make no mistake, this shift wasn't some accident. It was completely intentional. I mean, just listen to this quote from the new leadership. He said the intent was to run it like a business, not a great engineering firm. He said it out loud. The factory floor, which used to be the heart and soul of Boeing, it just became another line item, a cost to be squeezed, all managed from a fancy headquarters far away in Chicago. So, what did that new focus on business look like in the real world? Well, look at this number. Between 2013 and 2018, instead of investing in a brand new, clean sheet airplane, Boeing spent over $41 billion buying back its own stock. Now, sure, that pumped up the share price and made investors happy in the short term, but it basically starved the company of the cash it desperately needed to actually innovate for the future. And that single decision, choosing stock buybacks over designing a new plane, that decision led directly, like a straight line, to the 737 MAX, and to one of the most tragic and frankly avoidable chapters in the history of modern aviation. So here's what happened. Boeing was feeling the heat from their rival, Airbus. So they decided to rush an update to the 737, an airframe that was already about 50 years old. They slapped on these bigger, more fuel-efficient engines. The problem? Those new engines totally changed how the plane flew. So instead of a redesign, they came up with a software patch, a fix, called MCAS. And here's the key part. The whole point of MCAS was to make the new plane feel exactly like the old one. Why? So airlines wouldn't have to spend a ton of money on expensive new simulator training for their pilots. It all came down to cost. But this software fix had a fatal flaw, a huge one. It relied on data from just one single sensor. That's what we call a single point of failure. And that's exactly what happened. The sensor malfunctioned, the MCAS software thought the plane was stalling, and it started automatically, powerfully, forcing the plane's nose down over and over again. And the most unbelievable part? Boeing never told the pilots this system even existed. It wasn't in the manuals. So you have these pilots fighting for control with no idea what was happening to their plane or how to stop it. And this is the result. This is the human cost. 346 people. That's how many lives were lost in two separate crashes. Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Two brand new airplanes just fell out of the sky. All because of a chain reaction of decisions, every single one of them driven by cutting costs. Now, the 737 MAX disaster was the most tragic symptom of what was going on, for sure. But it was far from an isolated incident. This cultural rot, this profits over engineering mindset, it had spread like a disease through all of the company's most important projects. Just look at the 787 Dreamliner. To save a buck, Boeing decided to outsource huge chunks of the design and manufacturing to different companies all over the globe. The result? It was an absolute logistical and quality control nightmare. We're talking years of delays, billions of dollars in cost overruns, and so many production flaws that they had to ground the entire fleet at one point. And it wasn't just commercial planes. Even their space division, it was the same story. The Starliner capsule, this thing was supposed to be taking NASA astronauts to the space station. Instead, it's been plagued by one problem after another. Software bugs, busted valves, helium leaks, you name it. It's years behind schedule. And meanwhile, their competitor, SpaceX, they've been flying these missions routinely since 2020. It's a stark contrast.
And then you have the incident that got everyone's attention all over again. January 2024. A door plug, basically a placeholder for an emergency exit, just blows out of the side of an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX in the middle of a flight. The reason why is just jaw-dropping. Investigators found that 4 critical bolts that were supposed to hold it in place were never even installed at the factory. They were just missing. This wasn't some complicated software glitch. This was a complete failure of the most basic nuts and bolts manufacturing.
So you take all of that, the history, the disasters, the quality issues, and it all leads us back to the CEO's office today. And they are caught in what you could call a quadruple bind. Think of it like being pulled in 4 different directions at once. You've got Wall Street screaming for more planes and higher profits. Then you have the FAA, the regulators, putting their foot down and demanding a total focus on safety, even if that means everything slows to a crawl. Then you've got your customers, the airlines. They're desperate for new planes, but they are absolutely furious about all the delays. And finally, you have your own people, the engineers, who are just pleading for a return to a culture that actually respects them. It's a nearly impossible balancing act. And that relationship with the FAA, it has completely changed. They used to be seen as more of a partner. Not anymore. Now they are a very strict, very skeptical supervisor. They've done something pretty much unprecedented. They've put a cap on how many 737 MAXs Boeing can even produce. And they've flooded the factories with their own inspectors to watch over everything. The old days of Boeing basically regulating itself, oh yeah, those are long gone. And the FAA isn't just watching, they're keeping score. They've got this data-driven scorecard, and they're tracking things like how many hours are spent fixing mistakes on each plane after it's supposedly built, or how many unfinished jobs are still left on a plane when it rolls out of the factory. Now, to make those numbers look better, Boeing has to slow down, be more careful, but that is the exact opposite of what Wall Street wants. And that right there, that's the central conflict facing Boeing's leadership every single day.
So when you boil it all down, this isn't just about fixing a few problems on the assembly line. This is a truly existential choice for Boeing. It's about redefining what the company is even for. What is its fundamental purpose?
The new leadership has to tackle some massive questions. How do you actually make safety just as real and as important to everyone as the daily stock price? What kind of bold, decisive action can you take that sends an unmistakable message that the old way of doing things is dead and buried? And maybe the hardest one of all, how do you convince a skeptical Wall Street that the best way to make money in the long run is to focus on safety first? And that really leaves us with one final critical question. For decades, safety at Boeing was treated like a line item expense, a cost to be minimized. So the ultimate challenge for them now is this. Can they transform safety from just a number on a spreadsheet into the very core of their identity, the very reason they exist? The future of a global icon and the safety of millions of travelers really depends on the answer.